Hello, this is Cycle 1, Week 9 Science Experiment, and today we are going to identify crayfish. So what you have in your tutor bins is you have your crayfish, and I haven't opened this, but I'm assuming there's probably 8 or 9 crayfish in here. So each student will have one crayfish per pair. So each class will get about 4 crayfish because there is about 8 students in each class, and so there should be about 8 in here. So remember, each student will share 1 crayfish. You'll also have your dissecting kit, and this has, the kind of things you need: the forceps, little plates, wood probes, everything that you need. The one thing that's not in here is disposable gloves. So if you would like to have disposable gloves for your class, please, pick some up and bring them yourself. It may not be necessary because they'll have the forceps and the sticks to kind of, they won't have to touch the crayfish. However, if they accidentally touch one or something, or they think they might, you might want to have gloves on hand. So I'm going to let you decide for yourself what you think is best. So each class will have the crayfish and the kit to be able to observe your crayfish. You also have some sheets in your tutor bin, and you can use these if you want. Just there's enough for, you probably can send these home with the kids if they want, or if you just want to have it for a reference. And then there's also a little storage and disposable sheet that just basically explains, yes, you can, when you're done, you can throw these away in the trash in the classroom, and because we empty the trash at the end of the day, and basically how to take care of the crayfish and to make sure you are fine with the crayfish. So that's what you have in your tutor bin. When we do the crayfish observation, instead of doing the scientific method, so per our foundations guide, CC recommends that when we are not doing an actual experiment, that we can go through the more of the 5 core habits of grammar that's in our foundations guide of page 18 and 19. So if you read back over this again, it kind of goes over the naming, or the names. It's an acronym for the naming, attending, memorizing, expressing, and storytelling. So while we're looking at our crayfish today, instead of doing the scientific method and having a hypothesis, we're just going to go through the names and kind of the 5 core habits of grammar. So it's set up a little bit different because of that, per the foundations guide. So today our purpose is we're going to observe and explore the outside parts of a crayfish. So naming, learning how to identify and categorize. What have we already learned? You can go through, I have on here weeks 1, 2, 5, and 7, some of our foundations questions for this cycle that relate to a crayfish. Classification of living things, the kingdom of living things, major groups of invertebrates, and what are some ways animals reproduce. And then you can talk about how a crayfish is in the kingdom classification, the Animalia kingdom. They're in as far as the major groups of invertebrates, they're an arthropod, and they produce by laying eggs. So that shows it here, a little bit of information that we already know and how crayfish fits into what we've learned. I thought it was fun. I added this in here as far as we're going to talk about classifications later, but I thought this chart was kind of fun to help give kids a visual when we're singing these and classifying these things of how the classifications break down. And this chart shows from a house cat, what are the levels of classification: domain, kingdom, phylum, class and order, family, genus, species. And so a cat is in the, kind of goes through the domain, the kingdom, the phylum, and everything, but how it kind of classifies it to get it all the way down to a specific species, and how a cat is different than a bear or a bird or a leaf and a human. So it might help the kids to kind of see why we're classifying in science, why we're classifying things to get to a real specific species. And also when you look through the classifications of the crayfish to see they're in the same kingdom, and how the crayfish separates out from a cat. So they have that visual to talk about classifications. What do we still need to find out as we look at our crayfish? I would probably I won't open the crayfish until I'm done kind of giving the background history, and then when we're done with all this, then we'll open up the crayfish. Obviously the kids are going to be super excited and grossed out or whatever, so we're not going to open them until we get through some of this background information. So what do we still need to find out? We need to find out what we don't know about crayfish. And so you can read the Why with Miss Wizzle. I think this is good to just kind of give some background information about the crayfish. And then there's a few more things that you know about crayfish that are kind of interesting. Next is attending. So we're going to observe. So we're going to, at this point, we're going to pass out the crayfish. And like I said, students will be in pairs, so they'll share one crayfish. And we're going to open them up, and we're going to make a lot of observations. So you can be talking to your students as they're looking at them and asking, kind of just pointing out some things that I have. I have a long list here of things, you know, how long they are, their skeleton, their little segments, and you know, their legs. And so I have all the information here of parts of the crayfish that you can be observing with your class so that they can kind of find these things. So when they are, when they've looked at things, depending on your time, you know, they might look and be like, oh, that's cool, and then be done. Or they might really get, you know, interested in, for example, you know, counting how many, you know, how many legs they have, or how many parts of, you know, the tail there are, you know, all this kind of stuff. So you can kind of just take this information and the information here and really observe and see and observe with your senses. They also have in here this, you can make copies if you'd like each student to have one. I don't have copies for you. I'm not sure if you know, because the little kids can't write. But so you have one if you want to point, but for older classes, you could either make copies of this, or you could get out their science journals and you could have them draw a picture of a crayfish and then identify these parts, which is probably what I'll have my class do. And so they can identify the walking legs and the swimmerets and the antennas, you know, that kind of thing. So that can be kind of fun if you have extra time. The answers are on here as well. So let's see. Then if you have time, like I said, draw a picture of your crayfish in your science journal, and then it just kind of end. The key that I love about this lesson is, as far as relating it to God's word, is that one of the unique things about a crayfish is that it has a hard external skeleton, and because of this, the crayfish, that's how it protects his body. And so we can relate it to that, you know, just like God has provided a crayfish with the armor to protect itself, he's also given us an armor to wear daily. And so the Bible tells us to put on the full armor of God to protect us from adversaries. So just kind of relating how God is so amazing in his creation in every way. He protects these animals and also protects us. So that's about it. Just a lot of observing. You can send these home with your kids if you want. Otherwise, they're just lots of extras. You can put them back in you can bring them back and just put them back in for the next cycle. And then, like I said, when you're done, as far as disposal, you can follow this chart here and then have the kids, you know, wash their hands just in case. And I think that is it.